Hello, dear students. Welcome back to your English class of class 10. Today, I am here with a very interesting chapter from the supplementary reader. The first interesting fact is that the name of the chapter is same as the name of the textbook. Let us have a look at the textbook. This is your textbook. This is your supplementary book. The name of the book is Footprints Without Feet. You can see here it is. So the chapter which we will discuss today, the name of the chapter is same as your book, that is Footprints Without Feet. Without Feet. The name of the chapter is written on the board. You can see this, Footprints Without Feet. So the chapter is written by H.G. Wells. His full name is Herbert George Wells. Born on 21st September 1866 and died on 13th August 1946. Well, Herbert George Wells, he is an English writer. He was prolific in many genres. He wrote dozens of short stories, novels, and works of social commentary, autobiography, biography also. He was famous for his science fiction novels, and he is also called father of science fiction. The father of science fiction. Father of science fiction. H.G. Wells is also called what? He is also called father of science fiction because most of his novels are based on science fiction. Now, let us have a look at the title of the story, Footprints Without Feet. What does this mean? See, what is the meaning of footprints? Mane, marks of foot, alright, without feet. So, I can say the title means marks of foot but without feet, alright. पैरों के बिना पैरों के निशान, if I tell you in Hindi, alright, पैरों के बिना पैरों का निशान. Now how this is possible? This is explained in the story by H.G. Wells nicely. Alright, now first let us begin with the introduction of this story. Introduction to the story. This story is about a man, about an invisible man, a man who cannot be seen. That is why the title suggests his feet are not seen but his footprints are seen. This is the story of a scientist named Griffin who carried out experiments after experiments just to discover how to make himself invisible. And after carrying out experiments after experiments, finally he discovered a rare drug, that is a kind of rare medicine which after swallowing human body could become transparent or human body could become invisible. Alright, so this is the story of what? Of a scientist named Griffin, Griffin. Griffin was a brilliant scientist, but at the same time he was lawless. I mean to say, no doubt he was brilliant, but he was a lawless person. He broke law frequently. So he was a scientist, scientist, scientist. He was a brilliant scientist, but at the same time a lawless person. Lawless. Mane, he frequently breaks law. See, before we come to the discussion of the story, let me tell you one thing. Science is a blessing as well as curse, we know. The discoveries of science has helped mankind in various aspects, and at the same time it has demerits also. People have destructed so many things with the help of science. That depends on us actually how we use it. If we use it in the right way, that is good for mankind. But at the same time, if we use it in bad or illegal ways, that is again a curse. So that depends on us. Here we see Griffin, all right, he has discovered a medicine by which human body could become invisible. He was successful in his experiment, but becoming invisible, he has done many crimes for which here we can say, or H.G. Wells in this story is telling that this very person, he has done a lot of things which are against mankind, which are against the society even. Alright, now I repeat, what is the story about? This is the story of a scientist named Griffin, who carried out experiment after experiment and at last came out with a formula, came out with a rare medicine, came out with a rare drug, which after swallowing, human body or human beings could become invisible. He himself swallowed that medicine, that drug, and he became invisible or transparent, as said by H.G. Wells in this story. Hope I am clear with the introductory part, right? Okay. Now before we start the story, let us have a look at some difficult words which you will come across in this story. The first word is bewildered. What is the meaning of bewildered? Puzzled or confused. Eject, means turn out or take out or force out, means eject, turn out. Wedging means what? Speaking. Chink of money means what? The sound, the tinkling sound of money. The next word is poker. Poker means a metal rod. The next word is hysterics, which means what? Fainting. Alright. So these are some new words or difficult words which you will come across while going through the story. Now we will start the story. I will go line by line so that you understand this story easily. Alright. So dear students, I will start discussing the story. Before I start, take out your books, open your books, keep the book open in front of you and see what are the things I am going to discuss. So the story starts like this. See, before starting the story, some important points are written on the top right side of the first page of the story, Footprints Without Feet. It's written like this: can a man become invisible? This is the story of a scientist who discovers how to make himself invisible. Does he use or misuse his discovery? From here we can say that Griffin, he discovered how to make himself invisible, but just think of a while about his discovery, whether he is going to use his discovery or misuse his discovery. Alright, as we proceed the story, or after the complete discussion of the story, we'll know about it. Now let's start. The two boys started in surprise at the fresh muddy imprints of a pair of bare feet. What was a barefooted man doing on the steps of a house in the middle of London, and where was the man? The story starts like this. Two boys, they were surprised, they were shocked. Shocked at what? At the fresh muddy footmarks or footprints of a pair of bare feet. The two boys, they saw some fresh muddy footmarks or impressions or footprints of a pair of bare feet, and they were surprised. Then seeing the footprints, they could not see any person, only they could see the footmarks, seeing that a question came in their mind. What was the question? What was a barefooted man doing on the steps of a house in the middle of London? And where was the man? What was the question? In the middle of London, on the steps of a house, what was a barefooted? Means a person who was not wearing any sandal or chappal, what you say? A barefooted man. What was a barefooted man doing on the steps of a house in the middle of London? And where was the man? The footmarks, the foot impressions are seen on the mud, but the person is not seen. So they were thinking, where was the man? As they gazed, a remarkable sight met their eyes. A fresh footmark appeared from nowhere. As they looked intently, gazed here means what? To look intently, to look minutely. As they gazed, a remarkable sight met their eyes. A fresh footmark appeared from nowhere. So, as they gazed, as they looked minutely, something remarkable came in front of their eyes. What was it? A new fresh mark, a new footmark, a new marks of foot appeared suddenly in front of them, and they were shocked. Further footprints followed one after another, descending the steps and progressing down the street. The boys followed, fascinated, until the muddy impressions became fainter and fainter and at last disappeared altogether. So what happened then is, as they moved further, as they moved forward, they could see new footprints one after another. As they moved down the street, they could see new footprints one after another. But as they moved gradually and slowly and gradually, what happened is the footmark became fainter and fainter and at last disappeared. I mean, the footmark which they saw, the new footmarks which were seen by them, were slowly and gradually disappearing from their sight. The explanation of the mystery was really simple enough. The bewildered boys had been following a scientist who had just discovered how to make the human body transparent. So in this part, in these 4 lines, the theme of this story is given. As the 2 boys saw some footmarks, and after some time the footmarks disappeared. How did it happen? How did this happen? This was a mystery, and the mystery was simple enough. So what was the mystery? Actually, the 2 boys who were confused or shocked, they were following a scientist. They were following a scientist. Who was the scientist? The scientist was Griffin. They were following this very person, this very scientist, who discovered a rare drug, by which a human body can become transparent. Griffin, the scientist, had carried out experiment after experiment to prove that human body could become invisible. Finally, he swallowed certain rare drugs and his body became as transparent as a sheet of glass, though it also remained as solid as glass. See what is said in this part. The Griffin, the scientist, he had carried out experiment after experiment to show how human body could become invisible, and at last he was successful in his experiment. He swallowed that rare drug and his body became as transparent as a sheet of glass, though it remained as solid as glass. Means he could become invisible or transparent like a sheet of glass, but he could be felt. Brilliant scientist though he was, Griffin was rather a lawless person. His landlord disliked him and tried to eject him. In revenge, Griffin set fire to the house. To get away without being seen, he had to remove his clothes. Thus, it was that he became a homeless wanderer, without clothes, without money, and quite invisible, until he happened to step in some mud and left footprints as well. Griffin, in this part, we will see that H.G. Wells he has explained that Griffin, though he was a brilliant scientist, but he was a lawless person. So his landlord disliked him, and so his landlord tried to force him out of his home. To take revenge, Griffin set his landlord's house on fire. So to move away, to get away without being seen, he removed his clothes. Thus he became a homeless, a wanderer, means a person who travels from one place to another. He became a homeless wanderer, without clothes, without money, and quite invisible, until he happened to step in some mud and left footprints. Means what? Means he could successfully become invisible. But at the starting of the chapter, we have seen the two boys who had seen some fresh muddy footprints of a pair barefoot. Seeing that, they were confused, they were shocked. They could see the footprints, but they could not see any person. Actually, those footprints were left by whom? The Griffin. They were left by Griffin, the scientist. So, till the time he left footmarks, he was completely invisible. But leaving footprints on the mud, he created the confusions in the mind of the two boys, and they were bewildered, that is, confused. The next part. He escaped easily enough from the boys who followed his footprints in London, but his adventures were by no means over. He had chosen a bad time of the year to wander about London without clothes. It was midwinter, the air was bitterly cold, and he could not do without clothes. Instead of walking about the streets, he decided to slip into a big London store for warmth. So he could easily escape from the two boys who followed his footprints. But escaping from the eyes, from the sight of the two boys, his adventures were not over. Still, he was ready to do many more things. So as he moved out from his landlord's house like a homeless wanderer, he had actually chosen a bad time of the year. A bad time of the year to move around, to wander in London. It was midwinter and the weather was bitterly cold. As he removed his clothes to make himself invisible, so it was very tough for him to move out in open in London in midwinter, because the air was bitterly cold. So instead of walking around the streets for some time, he later decided to fall into a big store for warmth. Decided to move into a store for warmth. Closing time arrived, and as soon as the doors were shut, Griffin was able to give himself the pleasure of clothing and feeding himself without regard to expense. He broke open boxes and wrappers and fitted himself out with warm clothes. Soon, with shoes, an overcoat, and a wide-brimmed hat, he became a fully dressed and visible person. In the kitchen of the restaurant, he found cold meat and coffee, and he followed up the meal with sweets and wine taken from the grocery store. Finally, he settled down to sleep on a pair of quilts. So, after entering a store in London for moderate heat, after some time, the closing time of the store, the closing time had come. So The people who used to run that store, they closed the store and they moved. And Griffin was happy that he was not seen by anybody. Now he will be able to spend the night alone and without being noticed by anyone. So what did he do there? He clothed himself without regard to expense, because he did not have to pay for clothes or other eatables. So he clothed himself, he dressed up himself nicely. He broke boxes and wrappers and fitted himself with warm clothes. He wore shoes, overcoat and a wide brimmed hat, a hat with extended what to say, the side ear extended of the hat. And he became a fully dressed person with clothes, shoes, hat, overcoat, and he was now completely a visible person. In the kitchen of that restaurant, he found meat, he found cold meat, coffee and sweets taken from the grocery shops. He seated there and he ate those eatables. And finally he settled down to sleep on a pair of quilts. And finally what happened? The time has come to take rest. So he slept on a pair of quilts. Quilts means in local language what we say is tushak. Alright, now a question may come to your mind in this part. The store where he entered for what? For clothes. He wore clothes nicely, he became fully dressed and became a visible person. But where those eatables came? In a clothes store. Actually that is not only a clothes store. In our places even, the big stores which are there in our locality even are having different portions, are having different parts, are having different sides. On one side you will see the eatables are kept, the other side the ornaments, the other side clothing, something like that. It's a big store in which all kinds of things are sold but separately. Alright, so in that store he found eatables also along with clothes. Now if only Griffin had managed to wake up in good time, all might have been well. As it was, he did not wake up until the assistants were already arriving next morning. When he saw a couple of them approaching, he panicked and began to run. They naturally gave chase. In the end, he was able to escape only by quickly taking off his newly found clothes. Once more he found himself invisible but naked in the chill January air. What happened next is, in the next morning, Griffin remained sleeping. So the shop owners, they came and opened the shop, and Griffin could not manage to wake up, and the assistants, that is the shop owners, they arrived the next morning. When Griffin saw a couple of the people approaching towards him, he was confused, he was frightened. So they naturally started to run after Griffin to catch him. But at the end, Griffin was successful in escaping from the assistants by removing off his new clothes. Now again, as he removed his new clothes, he became naked. That is, he became invisible. So again, as this weather was very cold, bitterly cold, as it was midwinter in London. So what happened to him is, again he found himself in a very difficult situation, removing clothes just to escape from getting caught, and also to become invisible. Now we see that Griffin could be seen, Griffin could become visible if he wore clothes. If he removed clothes, if he is naked, he is invisible. Alright, so he removed his clothes, he became naked just to make himself invisible, to escape from being caught by the assistance of that store in which he spent the night. Alright, the next part. This time he decided to try the stock of a theatrical company in the hope of finding not only clothes but also something that would hide the empty space above his shoulders. Shivering with cold, he hurried to Drury Lane, the center of the theatrical world. So this time an innovative idea, a new idea came to his mind. He decided to move to a theatrical company store. Why? In the hope of finding something new, in the hope of being escaped, in the hope of not being noticed by anyone, and trying something new by which people could not identify him. So what did he do? He tried to hide the empty space above his shoulder. Empty space above his shoulder means the head portion. The head portion. Alright. Empty space above the head means the portion above our shoulders means the head. So he tried to do it. So shivering with cold, he moved to Drury Lane, a lane in London, and moved to a theatre to try something new. He soon found a suitable shop. He made his way invisible upstairs and came out a little later wearing bandages round his foreneck, dark glasses, false nose, big bushy side whiskers and a large hat. To escape without being seen, he carelessly attacked the shopkeeper from behind, after which he robbed him of all the money he could find. So what happened is, at last he was successful in finding a way. He moved to the theatre, he made himself invisible, moved upstairs and came out later wearing what? Wearing something new, wearing bandages round his forehead. He wrapped a bandage around his forehead. Dark glasses, he wore dark glasses, false nose. The way we have seen in dramas that some false appearances are being noticed, the way those are done here, Griffin had done this. He wrapped bandages around his forehead. He wore black glasses, a false nose, the way jokers are produced, jokers are made. He also, what else he had done? He wore a large head, big bushy side whiskers. Big bushy side whiskers means thick, something by which the sides of the face are covered, and he also wore a large hat. So if you see Griffin in this appearance, either you will laugh or you will be scared of. He made his appearance in such a way. So what did he do then? To escape being seen, he attacked the shopkeeper from behind and he robbed him, and he stole the money from the shopkeeper he could find. He robbed the shopkeeper, he stole the money from the shopkeeper and he moved away, having that strange appearance which he made after entering in the theatrical company. So I stop here the discussion for today. In the next video, in my next video, I'll come up with the next part of the explanation from the same story. Hope you understood the explanation till this part. If you have any doubt, any confusion regarding me, please let me know. You have my number. You can text me, you can WhatsApp me, you can call me and clear your queries. Thank you.